So I'd like to introduce, or invite to the podium, Merritt Paulson and Nguyen. Hey guys, thanks so much for being with us today. Also in the crowd here, big up to Steve Zakawan, who's in the house. Great to see Steve. Steve's been the team of the march to the match. Thanks for being here. Gents at the top first though, let's get into the meat with the three owners. We've got about 25 minutes and some questions from you at the end as well. Henry, you are the special guest. Merritt, of course, you're a guest here today. Henry is the special guest. Your franchise will be starting pretty soon in MLS. Tell us why you wanted to invest, what you saw in Major League Soccer which gave you the green light to be a part of this.
You know, I think it's pretty simple. For me personally, I'm an immigrant in this country. I grew up in Virginia since I was 2 years old, but I've been living and working abroad for over a decade now. And when you live outside this country, you realize very quickly there's only one sport that matters. We call it soccer, everybody else calls it football. And for us, it was very simple. You know, the opportunity to really do it in LA, you know, LA is one of the big global cities. This is the world's game. And we felt that we could really build a club that was worthy of this league, of where it was going. And really, you know, everybody talks about both the Timbers and the Sounders overseas. You may not believe it, but the culture you built here and this rivalry is one of the best ones. You know, I'm telling you, it's going to get up there with City and United soon. But I'll tell you, whether you're in Vietnam, you're in Japan, you're in South Africa, people are talking about this league. It's the rise of this game here, it's the rise of this league in the rest of the world.
You got to ask me the real question, Ross. When are you guys signing Cristiano Ronaldo?
Hey, I don't need the job. Merritt can run this whole thing. He's got the questions that matter.
You know, when you don't have a team on the field, it's really nice to talk about potential. All I'll say to you, Merritt, no comment. You didn't like that.
2 words I have not learned.
This time. And before we talk to our Sounders and Timbers compatriots here, Henry, what about the rivalry? We'll talk about the Sounders-Timbers rivalry in a moment. How important is it for you coming into LA that you have a natural rival already? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say their name to you, but you have a rival.
Now, of course, look, rivalry is what makes sports great, right? So, you know, for us, we're the challenger. It's as simple as that. You know, the Galaxy have been there from the beginning. You know, whether we like it or not, we're not going to erase their history of 5 cups. We're just going to have to surpass it, and we expect to do that. You know, the other problem is, you know, we're going to be the LA team. They're out in Carson, so LA versus Carson, I guess, is a rivalry.
Merritt, we really appreciate you coming into the Lions Den today. Talk to us about this rivalry, Seattle-Portland. I think everybody here knows exactly what it means. What does it mean, though, for the growth of MLS to have Seattle and Portland going at it as they do?
I think it's huge. I mean, this crowd understands what it is, as you said, and you can't fake a rivalry. You can't manufacture a rivalry. You can't say a rivalry exists before it does. In every rivalry, one of the key ingredients you need is time and tradition. And you know, this rivalry doesn't go back to you know, both of our teams coming into Major League Soccer. This is back to 1975, 1976, the NASL years. With time, it's grown, and you know, it's a driver. It's a big driver for this league. And, you know, we talk about other rivalries in this league, and we do have some other legitimate rivalries. And you know, geography is certainly a big component in you know, proximity. New York and you know, the Red Bulls will become a rivalry, but to put our rivalry on par with any other rivalry in this league, it's not close. And you know, it's very special. And I feel lucky to be a part of the rivalry, the best rivalry in Major League Soccer, and one of the best rivalries anywhere in the world.
And Adrian, you are competitors naturally, of course, but do you work together, the Portland Timbers and the Sounders, to build that rivalry? Is there stuff you do as a unit rather than as butting heads?
Yeah, for sure, we in a constructive way, we do try to build on, really, again, what Merritt tapped into, which is the natural part of the rivalry. It's about the fans, it's about the culture, it's about the history.
Watch out, Merritt, you'll have your head off. You'll have your head off.
What in the hell is that?
I had an encounter with one of that thing's cousins last year, and so somebody's got a good sense of humor.
So the one really cool and maybe unique thing about our rivalry in Major League Soccer is we do, like, on the field, fierce rivals. In whatever, an hour, we won't be able to be in the same room together. But on the business side, organizationally, we work together really well on best practices, how we continue to grow the rivalry, but also just pro soccer in the United States, North America. So again, I think it's healthily confrontational and aggressive, but it's also healthy in that we work together to improve soccer overall.
It's a little bit ironic as well, because we've got, I've got generally good relationships across the ownership group, but as it stands, I'd say my best friend in the ownership group is Adrian. And here
Can we get an R for that,
So there is a little bit of there is a little bit of irony there. We agree on a lot of things not related
Do I have to reciprocate that?
No, not in this crowd. Not in this crowd. In fact, we even just had a conversation prior to coming here. We both agree on the worst ref in Major League Soccer right now. I will not name that individual, but we're on the same page.
Henry, what's impressed you most about the Sounders-Timbers rivalry from, I'm sure you've done your due diligence on the league, but what particularly about these two teams has impressed you?
Well, first of all, I think it starts with the front office. Great organizations, top to bottom. But really, I think what it really is, when I'm talking about at the visceral level, it's the supporters. I dropped by and saw ECS here, Timbers Army. This is what the league is all about, right? Getting behind your club, supporting it wholeheartedly, and doing it with the people in your community, and really sharing the values of what your club represents. That's the beauty of this rivalry. It's deep. It's beyond this game. It's these cities, right? It's this Northwest, really clash that I think is really at the heart of this. But I'm telling you, this is now a global level rivalry that people talk about. I was telling my friends around the world, like, I'm coming here, and they're like, take a lot of pictures, you better post it. I gotta, hear what that experience is like.
And MLS itself is still 20 years young, really. The league is seeing a huge uptick. I'd be really interested from an outsider now on the inside, where you see the potential, how much potential you see in MLS, and whether it can achieve the aim of the commissioner, Don Garber, who says by 2022 he wants MLS to be one of the biggest leagues in the world. Where do you see that potential?
Look, you gotta have big visions like that. I'll put it this way, I think 20 years is a huge milestone for the league. Think about it, someone who grew up playing the sport, it has always existed in their minds. It has always been an option if you were a great athlete, that this is one sport that you could pursue. Whereas I can remember growing up, I remember going to Washington Diplomats games. I remember Johan Cruyff. But by the time I started playing seriously, there was no professional soccer to speak of. It's the old joke the Men in Blazers like to say, right? Sport of the future since 1974, right? But I really think this is it. This is a game on the rise here. And what's beautiful about this game is that it's global. This is the world's language. You can go anywhere in the world and talk about Ronaldo, and they'll know what the heck you're talking about.
Your new signing, right?
Yeah. Oh, wait a second. But the point being is this: I'll tell you something that surprises you. Now put me on the spot. You know what? We're going to start a rivalry right now.
That is fighting till everybody.
No, but I'll put it to you this way. Look, this city loves its Seahawks, right? Yeah. And the Seahawks are a great team. When you're talking about supporters base, fans, etc. But go around the world and ask them if they've ever heard of the Seattle Seahawks. I'm gonna He's sorry to inform you, outside of Mexico, Canada, and maybe the UK, nobody in the world has heard of the Seattle Seahawks. Go around the world and ask them if they've heard of Seattle Sounders. I guarantee you, 2/3 of the people, wherever you go, have heard of Seattle Sounders. Think about it. That's the difference between this sport and where it's going to go versus every other sport.
Well, just add to that. A guy who works for the MLS offices, a guy named Mark Abbott. When I met him probably 12 years ago, the sport was actually struggling. He's now the president, deputy commissioner. Said this is going to be an evolution, not a revolution. And I think he was really right. Although it's hard to tell the difference when you're in the middle of a revolution. Sometimes you feel like it's an evolution. But the fact that I think our average attendance this year at MLS is up around 21,000. It was 19,000 last year, 18 the year before that, 17. It's incrementally improving. TV ratings incrementally improving. Our youth systems, the players that are being developed in our country, incrementally improving. The international exposure the game is getting. We have a new deal with IMG, who's distributing MLS rights, and they're killing it out globally because people in the rest of the world are very intrigued about what MLS is up to. And then great ownership groups coming in, building out stadiums, investing in players, continuing to build. It's just, again, it's this incremental growth, and we'll be standing here 5 years from now, 7 years from now, talking about pushing 30,000 per game as a league, and TV ratings double what they are today, and more players in the league coming from youth systems, and more success in the World Cup, and so again, it's been 20 years, but the next 10, 15, 20 could be explosive.
Merritt, what particularly does MLS have to do more of or do better if it is to become this world brand, if it is to become one of the best leagues in the world in 8 to 10 years' time?
Well, right now, I think one of the big things is transparency. We can do better in how we communicate with our fans, how we communicate with the media. This is a veritable, you can't say it's a veritable teenager anymore. That's something we've talked about. 20 years old is a young league, but there's a fair amount of history there, and we've got a very complicated set of rules. A lot of it stems from a single entity, but I think we could better communicate what those rules are, how they work, and that's got to be a big priority for us in the near term.
And what about quality of play? You see in Seattle, you have Clint Dempsey, Femi Martins, those kind of guys in there. You see Kaká coming into Orlando City. How much will it accelerate the growth of the league, bringing those high-value guys with world experience and world fame?
And for me, it's getting some of the younger guys who maybe don't have those marquee names. I personally hate the idea, of the retirement league sort of moniker. You guys are all about the Lampards and the Gerrards and, still world-class players. But, I get more excited when I see teams personally going out and getting 25-year-old, 26-year-old guys in the prime of their career with their best years ahead of them. Like Valeri, he'd be a good example. And our supporters didn't know who he was and rolled their eyes when we signed him. And that's not a shot at, let me take it back. The collective league didn't know. I mean, we didn't hype that signing, and that was on purpose because we hyped the crap out of Chris Boyd, in our old world the year before, and it didn't work out so well. But that's, that is an example of a guy who I think's had a big impact on the field. And we don't need, and you don't need the buzz of a big marquee name. It's really about the quality of the football.
It's all three of you. The quality of the American player is key, isn't it? In all this, we just had a survey out this week from MLS saying that there are more internationals in MLS than any other American sport. But at the core of this is the American player. How much more do we need to do to make sure the standard of the homegrown guys gets better and better?
Yeah, I think we need to do a tremendous amount more. Our academy is 5 years old. Yours is probably about the same, 4 years old. And you know, we're certainly developing some of those players, but we can do so much better. We can do so much better in terms of facilities, in terms of coaching, sports science, education, you know, and also sort of changing the way the American development system happens. Again, I don't want to get too down in a rat hole, but you know, the way the American soccer player has been developed over the years is, you know, that on Saturdays they're out there running around playing those games, and it's really focused on winning. And we need to shift the focus slightly to development. At least that's what we see at the professional level. We need players with unbelievable skills and vision and creativity. We don't necessarily need more kids who can destroy things. And until we start developing some of those really creative, creative players who can really control the game, I think we have our work cut out for us. So anyway, we can do a huge amount more in development. It's getting better every year, but there's huge upside.
Henry, do you have a perspective on the American player?
No, absolutely. I mean, you know, look, we really have, you're talking about sort of density, you know, a concentration of the greatest athletes of any country in the world. The problem is that we have a lot of dilution, right? We have so many major sports. And oftentimes, when you're young, you're going on a track. You know, what's interesting to see is that all of our youth teams, if you look at all of our U17 and below teams, you know, we are competing right there at the very top, you know. But there's that gap that happens when we get to the 17s to the 23s. You know, even though our 23s just beat Mexico 3-0, you know, yeah. You know, there's still a gap there that, look, the priorities that we have as a society sometimes does have an adverse effect on what happens to the development of our players, whereas in the rest of the world, you know, when you're identified as a young talent, it's grinded out of you, and you make it or you don't, and those who don't make it are left in very bad circumstances. So, you know, I think there's a balancing act to do. You know, we have our young athletes going off to college. You know, you guys have Jordan Morris here. So, you know, there's a model that we have to adapt that's going to be very American. But I think what's going to happen just by rights of the league getting tenure is that, hey, look, there's a league, there's a professional league that when I got to high school, instead of picking up lacrosse or baseball or some other sport, I'm going to stick to soccer, and I'm going to try to find my way to professional level in this country. That's going to really be, I think, one of the two major catalysts for the uplift of this league. We got to have homegrown players, you know. But on top of that, I can tell you that more and more of the young up-and-coming players around the world, particularly from Latin America, are going to be looking this way instead of to Europe.
Great stuff. We'll hold there for a moment. I've probably talked enough. I wonder if you guys have questions for just under 10 minutes before we have to go. I've got a very short mic, so sir, if you'd like just to step forward and ask your question, keep it clean, I'm sure you will do.
It's for LAFC. Why did you guys not just absorb the Chivas Academy and rebrand it with your own brand? Why let LA Galaxy pull in even more riches? It didn't make sense to me hearing that. So.
No, look, we looked at this very, very deeply because, quite frankly, we know that there's a lot of great young talent in the Chivas system. That was one of the very, very few bright spots of their team. Now, you know, we had a decision to make. And really, the decision from the very beginning was we had to start our own history, and we had to kind of put away the negative kind of history and legacy of what Chivas had done. What they had done in the past several years really just destroyed any sort of, I'll call it, equity that they had left over. And when we looked at their academy system, we looked at their young players, we said, well, there are great assets there, but even just us trying to maintain whatever infrastructure was there keeps that Chivas legacy on us. And we're a clean break. You know, people always ask me, like, oh, you guys are replacing Chivas. No, we're not replacing anybody. We're a brand new club. You know, Chivas had its own history, didn't work out. You know, I'm sorry for the Tipplers and the Sounders that so maybe some of this young talent's going to percolate over to the Galaxy Academy system, but look, we had to make some choices, and for us, really the choice and the focus is really about where our home is, our stadium. And hopefully there'll be news in the very near future that will be excitement for, I think, the whole league, not just for our club, because we really want to, we have the opportunity to build, as one of the newer franchises, really a hallmark, a cathedral of soccer here in this country.
Who else has a question? Just raise your hand and we'll come to you. Yes, sir. Here in the middle.
So this question's for Adrian. There was recent news about Stephen Fry potentially being loaned out on Wednesday to Montreal. Is there any truth to that rumor at all?
They were looking for goalkeepers. Long story, if people don't know, Champions League final, second leg in Montreal. Montreal was down to their basically a reserve third string goalkeeper, and there was an opportunity to have a goalkeeper loan. We did get contacted. I actually didn't see the rumor on Steph. For sure they had asked about Perkins as well. But ultimately I heard that Sean Johnson got loaned to them for that game. So.
There you go.
But we were Steph we probably wouldn't have. Troy, if he had wanted, we probably would have.
Okay, more questions? Young gentleman down here.
I have a question for you. How many soccer players have there ever been?
Oh wow. Why is it kids always ask the best questions? Adrian probably knows better than me, but you're probably looking around 100 in MLS maybe with the
I was going to say 103.
There we go. He knows his stuff. Thank you for putting me on the spot there. I really appreciate that. We're supposed to be putting Merritt Paulson on the spot here. He's got away lightly. Yes, sir. If you'd like just to come forwards a little bit.
I do have a question for Merritt. So my question is, if you were Jordan Morris, what would you do? And then part B is, can you speak to whatever element of the Garber versus Klinsmann conversation you'd like to?
Told you wouldn't get any easy ones.
See, that's a smart question. Let's get Merritt to put his foot in his mouth.
Have you got that from Henry here? There were 2 words you could say.
So if I was Jordan Morris, I'd revoke my homegrown rights to Seattle and get the Portland Timbers. And I don't know how the heck, you live with the Don Garber, Jurgen Klinsmann thing a lot more than we do. I mean, they may give Darlington Nagy a call this year. I think if you're a fan of the U.S. Men's national team, and even those of you who are and can get past your hatred of the Timbers, is probably a player that brings something that they don't have right now in his ability to possess and explode into space. But we haven't been in the middle of the crosshairs of that because we don't have a guy on the national team right now. But look, I've got a little bit of an issue with some of the things Jurgen's done, some of his philosophies, but it's not about necessarily picking sides. I think the U.S. Soccer Federation and Major League Soccer are tied at the hip, and it's got to be. There's inevitably going to be some bumps in any relationship, but it's a critical relationship for U.S. soccer, and it's a critical relationship for MLS. There was a point in time when you would have said, well, it's a much more important relationship for MLS than for U.S. soccer. The tables have turned a little bit on that now, and is this league's come to its own? It didn't come to its own, but I'm not going to bash Jurgen publicly, if that's what you were looking for.
I'll put my foot a little bit further in my mouth. So I already have on this issue. The issue that came up recently that I, again, have really strong feelings about is that I do think that Jurgen has a short-term view of this. There's nothing wrong with that. He's the head coach of the U.S. national team. He's paid to win tournaments. So, that's just the reality of it. The problem that I have is that, for me personally, I may be wrong, but I think that the best way for the U.S. national team to be completely integrated and have the most success over the course of time is for U.S. soccer to be unequivocally behind Major League Soccer and trying to turn it into one of the great leagues in the world. And if all of those players want to stay in MLS, if we're completely, in alignment, that is the best for U.S. soccer, in my opinion.
I'll add to it, to the extent, hypothetically speaking, if somebody who's the head coach of the U.S. soccer team, or somebody who worked with them or anybody within the U.S. Soccer Federation was in Jordan Morris's ear telling them to go to Europe, Seattle Sounders fans should have a big problem with that. They should have a big problem with that. Something is broken there. It's a hypothetical, but that's not a good situation.
Not to want to stir the pot, Merritt Paulson. Final question, which we've got to go to, but sir?
Yeah, hi there. Hey, so, we talked this subject about U.S. soccer national teams. What drives me crazy is that the MLS is not, their schedules aren't synced up to international soccer. And it seems like you have to fix that first to kind of get coordinated with the rest of the national leagues in every other country. And I'm just curious of your thoughts on that.
Sure. So I'll take that one. So we've talked about this backwards and forwards over the course that I've been on the Board of Governors. So we have a few issues. First, I'll start with the fact that there are a lot of European leagues looking into our schedule because they like the idea that we play in the summer during the best time of the year to be a fan and go to games. So before we decide to flip to their schedule and then all of a sudden they decide that they want to go, we need to be careful there. The second thing is we have this ginormous territory, right? And you just cannot play games in Toronto, Montreal, in half of our markets in December, January, February. It just can't happen. So we have this huge weather challenge that keeps us from being able to play those games. And then, it's just a question of, in the rest of the world, soccer, football is really the only sport that matters. So they can have an 11-month season, spread those weekend games out so that they can take the breaks on the international windows, so that we don't have this conflict where players are missing club team games but playing for their national team. So, maybe not the answer you're looking for, but it is a super complicated and multifaceted issue, and believe me, we talk about it probably twice a year at the Board of Governors meetings.
Gentlemen, the march to the match is about to engulf us, so we will have to go. But before we do, can we give a huge round of applause to our good gentlemen, Nguyen from LAFC.